about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Today, we are pleased to have Miss Emily Rhorick, who's an undergraduate student at the College of Charleston, in South Carolina, where she is pursuing a degree in business and economics. She first became interested in the ideas of liberty while learning about the Constitution and the ways that it has been applied throughout history during her senior year in high school. She served as a campus coordinator last year, where she worked with groups across South Carolina to spread the message of liberty, something that's so desperately needed. Currently, she is on the North American Executive Board of Students for Liberty and the Southeast Regional Director. Please feel free to call during our live broadcast, 646-652-4620. That's 646-652-4620. And remember, if you want to ask a question, you can listen to the program while on the phone, but if you want to ask a question, press the one button so we know that you want to make a comment or ask a question. We look forward to hearing you. Emily, thank you so much for returning to our program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's wonderful seeing you again. Usually I'm dealing with older folks, you know. I don't like old people. Old people are funny, I tell you. I like young people, you know, because I'm young at heart. I mean, my bones are going, you know, crinkling up, but you know, I'm young at heart.
You are young at heart. You're very young at heart.
Anyway, Emily, let me start this way. What's hot? What's not? What's going on?
So right now, I think we're getting really close to Constitution Day. So a lot of students are getting ready for sort of Constitution Day activism on campus. Students for Liberty, we actually have right now activism grants for students of $100 if they want to submit some stuff, and then they can do specific Constitution Day activism, which ranges from something like a free speech wall or ball on their campus, or like a graveyard of lost rights, a giant constitution for people to sign to reaffirm their rights. And sort of, we also have a lot of students that get pocket constitutions from like Cato or Young Americans for Liberty, and they pass them out throughout their campus kind of to remind people about the Constitution.
Well, that's great. So, is that garnering a lot of interest or just idle curiosity from the students? How is that working out?
I think it gets a lot of interest. Personally, I think the activism ideas, like we've been doing Constitution Day for a while now, and the ones that we have left, so sort of the free speech stuff and the graveyard stuff, are the ones that have attracted the most attention from students. If you put up tombstones on campus, people stop and they want to know what you're doing. So they'll stop by and then they'll talk to you. And sometimes they'll agree, sometimes they won't, but it does get their attention and it starts a conversation. The free speech stuff always garners a really good turnout because people do really believe in their free speech, no matter sort of what side of the political spectrum they are. Students especially are very conscious of that.
Yeah, you know, my very first experience with student activism actually was about 1960, I guess 65, and I returned to the school that I graduated from. Pace, it was Pace College at the time. It is now Pace University in New York City. Very good school, and it's a financial accounting school. And was interesting, when I went there, I took a night class, and there were a bunch of students, a group of students, and they were talking about the war in Vietnam and all the things that they were doing in the protest and whatever. And that was so foreign to me, you know, because before that, you know, there really was very little. You went to school to get a college degree so you can get a good job with a big company, you know. I mean, no one thought of activism at the time. And I felt I never forget, I sat there in the student lounge. I had already graduated. I was taking some extra courses in economics and finance. And I felt so uncomfortable because I was never exposed to that before. But they were absolutely correct. I mean, I felt uncomfortable. I felt like, what are these nutcakes doing? And it took me a while to realize that what they were doing was absolutely right. The only thing is that here you are in a school that's noted for it's a top-notch accounting school, and you have student activists talking about the war in Vietnam, and it just didn't fit it whatsoever. But that was my first experience. But I guess ever since then, most students have been activists. Many students have been activists in colleges all the way along, and it didn't have to be the war in Vietnam or a war. It could have been any other issue. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I think at least activism on campus is much more accepted now, and it's much more prevalent. You'll see all groups, all different types of groups, for the most part, doing activism on their campus. I think majority of students maybe don't participate in the activism, like they'll sign up for the groups or they'll just be members, and then you'll have your core group of people that actually go out and do the activism on campus. But it's very widely sort of accepted, and people kind of know what they're getting into, and it's an effort to educate students. That's what college is for, and this is just a different type of education on things happening around them that they might not get by sitting in a classroom.
What is the disposition of the professors in regarding what you guys are trying to accomplish? Do you get much support from the faculty, or do they look at you with disdain, which I suspect is not probably too far from the truth? But
I mean, it definitely depends on where you go to school. I know at my campus we have gotten very lucky with an econ department that's very supportive of us, and also a political science department that's very open, and they want to share any opportunities with students. So they'll share all types of opportunities, whether they agree with us or not. They'll send it out, tell their classes about it if we have a speaker coming in about a certain topic that maybe they've covered in class. So we've been really lucky about it. You have other campuses where people will ask professors to do that and they won't, because they don't really agree with it. You'll have some campuses where professors might actively go against what the students are doing through newsletters or something like that. It really depends on where you are, and the way your school's set up. I don't think that professors, though, are the biggest problem. A lot of times it's actually school administration that's a bigger problem that students seem to face compared to the professors.
Well, I know someone who has a PhD, excellent school. In fact, he was awarded the, I don't know the exact title, but best teacher of the year by the students, It is a college. I will not mention the college or the person's name. And he had, at the time, he had 9.5 years, I think 10 years is tenure. But he was very libertarian, very free speech oriented, exactly what you're doing. And they refused to give him tenure because of that. And he actually had to go and move to a different state in order to teach because he could not get tenure and they wouldn't take him in any other college. And yet he was voted the best, and it was a large school, by the way, best professor in the school.
Yeah, it definitely happens. And I think you can see that with sort of all aspects, but any time that you're sort of the minority in terms of ideas, which sort of seems to happen to libertarians a little bit more right now, you kind of open yourself up to that type of criticism and that type of retaliation sometimes.
Well, I find it interesting because you would think in a college setting, free thinking would be what they're trying to accomplish, people to think critically. And yet you get in economics, for example, in colleges, you typically get the Keynesian school of economics, which is nut science, and yet when you bring up something logical, you can get yourself in trouble or you have an argument with the teacher. And it seems to be the exact antithesis of what college is supposed to be. I mean, they're following a paradigm which has never worked, has destroyed most countries, but they continue to teach it. And if you bring in free market principles, I mean, you're scorned. I can never understand that. It almost seems like, let's not go to college so we can learn. I mean, how far off am I in my thinking?
I think, like I said before, I'm really lucky in that I have a very sympathetic econ department at my school. They're fantastic and very open-minded about things. But I think it's accurate for a lot of people's college experiences. At the same time, though, I think that's why student activists are so important, because they're out and they're interacting and they're other people's age and they're presenting a viewpoint that they might not be taught. So any type of student activism, bringing in speakers like economists to talk about the other side onto your campus, or even just challenging what people think or what they're taught is so important, because some people are only getting a certain side of it.
I'd love to come to your school and talk about the economic conditions of the United States.
Yeah,
I would love to do that. I love going. I was invited to a class, an entrepreneur class, and the students loved what I had to say. I'm a business person, I talk in real terms. I identify with Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank. You don't kill money. You treat money with respect and you make it grow. You nurture it. And I was never asked back. Now the student, and I mean it. I knew I was never going to ask back, because the students loved it. They were sitting at the edge of their seats. We could have gone for hours, and I sensed that the professor, who probably never held a job outside of the university setting, was seething. You can just tell he was looking at me. If given an option, he would have just physically thrown me out the window. And I didn't say anything wrong, other than I talked in real terms and not in these hypothetical terms. I never forget, I opened up by saying, they all had these business plans in front of them. And I said, geez, that's interesting. I said, I've started several businesses. I said, one thing I've never done is a business plan, and I should have. I said, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I said, it's an excellent exercise to go through. I said, but I've never been in that persuasion. I said, let me ask you a question. So I picked on this one student and said, fine. I said, you have a business plan there. They don't have to tell me what business you're in. A customer calls and he tells me, he tells you that he's suing you because the product did something wrong. How does that fit your business plan? And the guy looked at me and went, I don't know. I said, well, geez, you got a problem, don't you? I said, how many widgets could you produce in your company? I said, we're making this up, obviously. He says, well, I don't know. I said, well, let's assume you can produce 100 a day, okay? He said, all right. I said, your business plan is to produce 100 a day. I said, I call up and said, I want 1,000 a day. How does that fit your business plan? He said, I don't know. And what I was doing, I was trying to give him the real world of what happens is that what you plan and what you get are two different things. But the professor didn't see it that way. He got so angry because it didn't fit the paradigm of having a business plan. And if you do it properly according to Hoyle, then your business runs properly. If not, the business fails. And it's the exact opposite is actually what happens. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on. But I was just wondering if that's the type of thing that you run into when in classes when reality hits academia.
I think it happens sometimes. You have a mix of people, I think, in academia now where I am a business and economics major. So I've had professors who they actually do work full-time jobs and they sort of do this on the side, or they were in business for years and now they're doing this they slowed down a little bit and now they decided to go and teach what they know. And then you also do have the professors who sort of have studied it in academia and they've done the research on business and stuff like that. It's a very wide variety, I think. But there is a big difference. There's a time and a place to learn the theories and the framework, but there is also a very important part of learning what the actual world looks like. One thing that I've always enjoyed is case studies, and actually getting a real case about what happened to a company and analyzing what happened, what went wrong, and how you could potentially avoid it if it were to happen to you, although that's not always possible to anticipate. But it's interesting, I think, because there is that problem, and I think that's a common complaint about academia is that people just kind of get stuck in the bubble of it. At least where I'm at and where I know a couple of my friends are at, it's not as prevalent in that at least you have some options and you can always sort of look into your professors before you take the class and figure out what their experience is. And depending on what you want out of the class, you can kind of make your schedule around that.
You may want to ask your professor someday if you don't care what kind of mark you get, you may get thrown out of class. But you say over half the billionaires in the world today do not have a college education. How did that happen?
They had an idea, I guess, but that's a good question to ask.
But that's an interesting statistic, is it? Billionaires. Yeah. We're talking billion people who own large companies who probably steer commerce worldwide. They don't have some don't have a high school. Do you know the fourth richest man in the world does not have a high school education? because he's dyslexic.
Yeah.
Richard Branson. He is dyslexic. He could never go to school. He can't read, And at one time he was the third or fourth richest man in the world. I don't know where, the ranking changes every year. Amazing. But what he did do is he did things, When something failed, he started a company to make it fix, to fix it, and he did things like that. And I was at a business meeting, and this woman came and she presented her business plan and the problems that she was having, and everyone went around the table giving her suggestions on her business plan. And I didn't say a word throughout the entire whole hour. I didn't say a word. So everyone turned to me and they said, "Joe, you've been quiet. Say something." I said, "Fine." I said, "Well, I can't disagree with anything that anyone said." I said, "But I can tell you what the real problem is." She says, "What's that?" I said, "It's you." And very simple. I said, "You're spending your time revising your business plan. It's time for you to get back to work and make it work."
Yeah.
And the room went silent for the longest time. I mean, the silence was deafening. And I think I was absolutely right, by the way. She just had to get out and do it and stop thinking about it. And I think these billionaires do exactly that. They go and do it. Do they fail? They fail many more times than they succeed. But eventually, overall, they do well. I would love to be in college today. I get thrown out. I mean, I would get Fs across the board. I wouldn't pass a class. Tell me, what's going on with the elections? How are what's the disposition and the interest in the especially the Republican election for president, and what's the attitude of the students there?
I think that at least from what I've seen, the mass majority of students are very kind of uninterested in the Republican part of it. I mean, you'll have
that's strange.
You have groups that, like I know the Democrat group on my campus last year already had, ready for Hillary stickers printed out and stuff like that. The Republican group on campus really hasn't sided with one candidate or another, which probably makes sense because there are so many people in the running for it. It's very odd. There's just not really that much talk about it. I know a lot of candidates are going around to college campuses, though, and trying to sort of garner the youth vote and actually talk to them. I think one of the big problems that you'll see is that most people probably didn't watch the debate. Most students, at least, didn't watch the debate. It didn't really interest them. They didn't care about it, and they might start caring when it gets a little closer to the election. Right now, we're not really seeing too much of that. And I know, I focus more with Students for Liberty. We're a nonprofit, so I don't really focus on that part of it. We focus a little bit more on the ideas part.
Right.
But we don't even really have people coming up to our table and talking to us about it. They just, which happened, I think, when I first got involved. That was the 2012 election. Even though we were essentially nonpartisan and not supporting any candidate, you would still have people coming up to you and talking about it. And we haven't seen that yet on campus, at least our campus. And it could just be the climate of our campus right now, which is very, I think, liberal leaning sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Well,
they don't really care.
it just seems to me that now I'm not a Republican, that's for sure, and I'm not a Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm a free thinker. I typically do not vote unless there's someone who I feel is worthy of my vote, and that is very rare. Ron Paul, for example, I voted. I actually changed my party affiliation from Independent or Libertarian, which we lost the Libertarian Party here because of too many signatures are required to keep it on the ballot. So I was an independent, but I did change it to Republican just so I can vote for Ron Paul. There's a reason for me to do that. And I went through a lot of pain and suffering to do that. I didn't want to do that, but I did it because I wanted to vote for Ron Paul in the primary. But shy of that, it would seem to me that a person going to school would have to be near brain dead to vote for Hillary Clinton. And really, and I'm not saying that she's bad and all the rest are good. I think they're all horrible, But on the horrible scale, she ranks really high. You can't be a thinking person and saying this person is qualified. She has everything against her. All the dirt in Washington half of it is on her shoulders. how would people ever conclude that she should be president of the United States and make whatever is bad about this country even worse, because everything that's bad about this country is what the politicians, Republicans and Democrats, have initiated, and promulgated and put into action, and it's got progressively worse. So what we're going to do is do a lot more of the same with Hillary, who's already, proven in many ways, shape, or form to be not the most, reliable character in the world. Where's it? Do you have brain dead students or what? How does that work?
No, I think what really is happening is that you get warped into the students and people in general, and this can happen with any candidate, get really warped into the idea of the candidate. So they'll only listen to things that come from the candidate. Like, I'm sure you and I see a lot of things against Hillary because of certain circles that we're in, but the people that are for her probably don't see any of that, and they probably don't hear the negative part because they're self-selecting, just like I could self-select the news that I see to hear what I want. They can self-select the news that they want, so that they're only hearing that part. They're only hearing the good stuff to support her, and I think that's sort of the idea behind student activism, and whether you're like nonpartisan group or whether you're for a certain candidate, it's about getting something else in front of people that self-select their news media to only hear what they want to hear.
But isn't that the antithesis of going to college? Isn't going to college supposed to expand your mind, break through all those paradigms that people said, if you were brought up in a Republican household or a Democrat, that you voted that way? Isn't college a place where you debate these issues? You look at you don't look at the person and saying, well, I'm a Democrat, so I'm going to vote for a Democrat. It just seems that college is failing if they're doing that.
I personally, at least in any class that I've ever had, we don't really discuss the elections or what's happening. We'll discuss it more in a theoretical term about what could or potentially be good for the country, pros and cons, and stuff like that. Like, I'm obviously not a political science person. Also, you have like history people, biology people that are very specialized in their field, so they're really never going to hear this stuff at all. So it's an interesting case. Like, it is supposed to do that, and you're supposed to start thinking more. And depending on what discipline you're in, like, you're always going to start thinking more and you're going to learn a lot more. But in terms of what you're going to learn is very dependent on your major.
We've lost her for some reason.
I think we lost you, Emily. Hold on a second, please. What happened?
Internet connection problem.
We have a connection problem that just went blip, and we're unblip it. I'm getting my board operator to.
We're trying to get her back right now.
Okay. Well, we have Emily Rhorick. She's for Students for Liberty, and we're discussing student attitudes, what's being discussed, and what the trend is, because these people are our future, and being our future, we need to nurture them properly. And it just seems to me that the schools are doing, from what I hear, a half-hearted job. They bring their prejudices with you rather than suggesting to people that they open their minds and they think logically. It seems that this is something that most professors would prefer not to do because they want to promulgate their own ideology in the classroom, which I think is absolutely wrong. And I think that's why most people that I know of that are very successful business people who are very, very wealthy never went to college. They never got tainted. So I often wonder whether or not our colleges are fulfilling the mission in which they were forced to do. Now, do we have Emily back on the line?
Yes, we do.
Emily, are you there?
Yeah, I don't know what just happened.
Yeah,
I came back.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the term political science. I think that's an oxymoron. I don't think there's ever been two words put together that didn't fit, because politics and scientists are supposed to be, you don't do scientific work and say, well, I believe that this is going to happen, so I'm going to experiment to make it happen than prove it happened. I mean, that's what politics does. So when we say political science, I go, no, don't bastardize the word science like that. It's not fair. Anything with politics is tainted, Anyway, but what's your thought on that?
I mean, it's interesting. I think it's a weird use of the word, definitely, because there's not really hypotheses that you can test. You can look at cases where things happen, but you can't definitively always explain exactly what happened there because there are so many factors involved with political processes. But you could also say at the same time, like, I'm getting degrees in economics and business, and both of those fall under the Bachelor's of Science degree. I am not a science person at all, but I end up with 2 degrees that say Bachelor's of Science next to them.
Right. But at least in business, there's a science to business, if you will. I mean, unless you're prejudiced. I mean, it should be political prejudices. I mean, if we said political prejudices, that would be an accurate description of what that is, because people bring all their prejudices with them. Hillary Clinton can be caught stabbing a poor kid to death. I mean, I'm not making that up, obviously, or doing some heinous crime, and someone will say, oh, she was just having fun, it was okay. I mean, because we become so prejudiced that we will support anything a person does that we support. And I think a reason for that is that we don't want to be wrong. If I think Hillary is good, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be proven. I don't want to be proven to me that she is not the best person in the world to be president, because I don't want to be wrong. So I will defend. I'm not defending her. I'm defending myself, because I don't want to be wrong. I want to be right. But of course, I'm always right. I'm never wrong.
I mean, it's also a sense of that people have where they want their candidate is sort of the one that most closely aligns with their views. Obviously, most people, none of them align perfectly. But if this is the person that best represents your views, you do want to support them, and you would probably even defend them, because in a sense, you're defending yourself and your own ideas.
But my response to that is that they really don't know what the view is. I mean, they're taking what the person's saying, and I'll tell you, but most of what Hillary says, I would agree with, but the execution ain't going to happen. I would disagree 100%. So I see what you're saying, but from my years of experience, and I'm getting too old for this, by the way, it just doesn't make any sense. I would love to come to your school and talk. I mean, I get thrown out, and if you invited me, you would never graduate. But so I won't come. But let me ask you this: what do they think of Donald Trump? I'd love to hear your response to that.
I haven't yet to see a positive reaction or anything not resembling a joke. So that's sort of what I've seen so far. I also I saw Donald Trump speak this past summer at Rhorick in Vegas, and there were some similar reactions there to people about him. It's interesting, some people, at least young people, I don't think any young people take him very seriously, just because things like immigration and those are issues that are very important across the board to a lot of young people. You don't really have too many younger people who say that, the border should be closed or something like that. So that's one of those views of the Republican Party that just really isn't that prevalent among young people. So they can't take him seriously because they don't understand how other people are taking him seriously.
Yeah. Well, so he's leading in the polls. Why do you think, and why do you think the students think that he is leading in the polls? What is their reaction to that, or your reaction?
I mean, I think some people just want to see how far it can go. And I think also the people that do sort of participate in those polls and the people that sort of participate in the primaries are those who are more inclined or a little bit more radical in their views. So maybe he does fit their perspective or their ideas, but not necessarily a majority of the population's ideas. But the majority of the population is the election is still, over a year away. Why are we worrying about it right now?
Oh, that's true, right? Yeah. Well, do you get the sense that that the students are saying, well, he's popular because he's establishment, and the establishment really sucks. Basically it does. It just it's rotten to the core. We all know that. We all know that our form of government, although it's supposed to be a constitutional republic and all that stuff, we have an oligarchy where a few people run everything through industry. It's almost a quasi-fascist form of government where business and industry run everything. That's where all the money goes. Everyone in Washington is rich. Everyone outside the Beltway is dirt poor. We're in relatively sorrowful shape from a relative point of view. Do you think do many students feel that he's popular because he is talking against the political establishment and that's good for America?
Maybe, but I think no matter, he's directly saying it, but in your head, if you believe that the establishment is a problem, but you support a certain candidate, you think that candidate is that different one, like that special star that's going to stand out and change everything.
Right, yeah.
No matter where you are, you think that's your candidate. And then you have people that get disappointed when people actually get into office that they supported. Even students, I know a lot of students who are, I don't think they would say that they still wouldn't vote for Obama, but they were disappointed in the results, even if they're staunch Democrats. Just because it's the reality of what happens once someone gets into office is very different from what they promised beforehand in order to get there. So, but that little, that special star mentality of my candidate is always going to be prevalent, I think, because everyone in their own way is against the current establishment that just happened.
Yeah.
So they'll think that, this person will change it and then everything will be better. And that's people not really understanding the actual problem happening. If you think that, one candidate's going to change the way things are done, the problem is more of a public that isn't really educated on the issues and the ways that things affect them. You can say, if you say nationalized healthcare, a lot of people think that sounds like a really good idea, but they don't really know what that means.
That's correct, yeah. The stuff that sounds good usually runs bad,
Yeah, so it's just a matter of people sort of taking politicians and taking sort of things on their word of it, not really looking too much more into it or doing research or thinking about what the other side of it could be. And then for some reason, people attribute the president to being the end-all be-all of the success of the government or the government doing what they want, and that's really not the case at all.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate because I feel pretty strongly that if someone was elected president that truly wanted to put America back where it was constitutionally and made this a free country, that person wouldn't live very long. Somehow that person would have an accident. And I really feel that way. I think that's what happened to John Kennedy when he decided to write an executive order doing away with the Federal Reserve. The ball game was over. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories regarding that. And I think anyone who really tries to change the establishment, it's like, becoming part of the mob and then telling the mob, well, we're going to be honest business people. The person's gone. And I don't think it can happen. And I think it's become so corrupt. It's from a practical point of view, it's not possible. It ain't going to happen until we have some sort of tremendous crisis where there is no choice but to change what we're doing now. But unfortunately, I think the change will come, the changes that will be made will make things even worse, because what people will do is they'll vote for what sounds good. Like you said, it sounds good. National health care sounds good, but it exasperates the situation. Emily, could you hold on for about 1 minute or so while we break for station identification? We'll be right back. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you, what type of debates that you have and what are the hot issues that you discuss and what kind of response that you receive from them? Okay, so give that some thought. We'll be right back.
Okay.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective, not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more. We'd like to thank attorney Constance Squires for her support of Liberty Talk Radio. If you want a comprehensive way to affordably avoid legal issues, call Constance Squires. For a free consultation, call 918-254-9283 or go online at isthyWillDone.com.
Steve Harden of the Harden Insurance Agency has over 30 years of experience designing family insurance protection, including retirement planning. Call 918-488-0024 or go to hardenagency.com and request a free in-depth estate and retirement evaluation. We look forward to earning your trust and helping you meet your life goals.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty Talk Radio.
Folks, we're back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. And with us we have Emily Rhorick. She's with the Students of Liberty. And we're talking about the student mentality, I guess, and their thought process in the political arena and where we're going with that. Her group, the Students for Liberty, talk about free enterprise and the freedom of the individual in our marketplace, something that you don't hear much about. You only hear about how government's going to solve our problems through more government programs that suck the money right out of your wallet. But we don't talk about that right now. Emily, what is being discussed right now, and how are you responding to your students that object to or have a question about your position?
Yeah, so one of the big things actually that's being discussed a lot that liberty groups have been doing sort of across the U.S. and Canada has been the idea of free speech. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, a lot of campuses especially public schools, very heavily regulate sort of where students can table, what students can do, what student groups can do, what they can say. A lot of times, some schools will have actually a cornered off free speech zone at a public university. And this is about the only time, or this is the only place you could table, this is the only place you can hand out things to other students and stuff like that. So we've seen a lot of our students who go in and they fight this sort of free speech zone on their campus, or they fight unjust speech laws on their public university's campus. And that actually, some people, at least from a student perspective, that has garnered a really positive reaction from a lot of students. We've seen some professors who aren't so happy with the students that do that. Some of the students even file lawsuits against their campus. When I first became involved with Students for Liberty, we actually had a student, one of our campus coordinators, who was passing out constitutions on Constitution Day.
Yes.
And the school told him he was not allowed to do that because he was not in the free speech zone of his campus. And then he eventually went on to sue the school, and they got that whole thing repealed.
Well, it's a freedom of association. I mean, the school's saying you don't have freedom of association.
Right.
I mean, it's insane. It's absolutely insane, and from many perspectives. I mean, Republican, Democrat, it's insane.
Yeah. So that's something that students are actually very in support of. For the most part, you'll have some students who say that, well, it's the biggest argument for those types of zones are that it's sort of disrupting my education by you being here and blocking my way to go to class or something like that. But it's always discussing something with someone is always very voluntary. No one's like trapping you and forcing you to talk
Oh, absolutely.
to them.
You don't have to accept the copy of the Constitution. And what's wrong with the Constitution? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's the foundation of our country. And yet, if you pass it out, you get in trouble. I'll be honest with you. I'm not too high on our university system. In fact, I'm not too high on any school system because it becomes a system and not really a place of learning. It becomes too ideological, too political, too staid, too structured, and that's the antithesis of what college should be, what school should be. It should be an open. You should open your minds to arenas that you would never be exposed to. And what they do is they seem to close more doors than they open them. Am I just getting too old and cynical, or what?
I think it has a lot to do with the change of college from what it was originally intended to be to what it is now. It used to be more of a, you go there to learn more and to explore and to find out new ideas and to sort of develop new ideas and open your mind. And it's turned into more of people see it as professional development now. So you get into your major, you get into your specialization in school, and you're very narrowly focused on what you're doing. So you're not really hearing anything else. So like if you are a biology major, you don't really hear anything about political processes or any ideas sort of outside of most people are. You'll have a few that sort of go out on their own and they get involved in groups that are unlike their majors. But most people, they kind of stick to groups and they stick to classes that sort of relate to their career paths, and college has changed a lot to being something where this is this step that I need to take to reach the next step in my career that I want to have. So if I want to be a doctor, I'm going to focus on this biology degree or this pre-med degree that I'm going after, and anything else is a distraction from my end goal. So I think college has just changed a lot in terms of what it's doing. I think student organizations play a big role in that because that's something people can do no matter what they're doing. And I know my group personally, we have surprisingly I'm the only econ major in my group, oddly enough, but we have several like biology majors and we have a few archaeology people and history people. So it's a very diverse group of people, and they're passionate about this stuff. So they'll go out in the middle of the week to go hear a speaker, or they'll go and sit in classrooms on a weekend to go to a conference about these ideas that they're very passionate about. But if you're not super passionate about it, you're not really going to open your mind to anything new other than the ideas that you'll learn what you need to know to get the next step that you want to achieve in your career. But you might not learn exactly what you need to know to sort of be knowledgeable about the world.
Mm. Well, it's interesting in the sciences like biology, and if an experiment is conducted and it's proven through this experiment, which is has all parameters around it to make sure that it's accurate, and it proves something that we believed to be true before to be incorrect, they change it. I mean, because it's proven in the lab. And we've done the same thing in economics. I mean, we've proved that the free enterprise system works, and a Keynesian system of government intervention doesn't work. And it's been proven over and over again. Look at Europe, look at China, look at Russia, look at all the countries around the world. And yet what we're doing is we're embracing the very system that's been proven in the lab, the world being the lab, not to work, and we foster that. And then we teach it in school and we encourage it in school, and people think that way. I could never understand that. I think we should close down all the universities. What do you think of that?
I think that you definitely you can nitpick and you can say that Keynesian economics works, and I think that's what a lot of people will do. Like they'll say, after when the government was heavily regulating goods and services during World War II and following it, the economy was great and all of this stuff. So you can nitpick whatever you want and make it fit. You can nitpick history and make it fit your ideology. Right. And I think that's a lot of people's justifications for keeping something like these ideas that, like I've heard people say multiple times that free market economics has won the war of ideas. What we're missing is the war on sort of people's hearts and the emotional war that sort of the Keynesian economics will always sort of have that stronghold over, because it's like, well, the government's here to protect you and people want to feel protected.
Right.
So we've proven that our ideas economically make more sense. We've won that part, but we haven't yet been able to express it in a way to other people to really prove to them that we care about this and we think this is the best way to go because this is best for people in general. I know there's a really good documentary that I'd been watching a while ago called Poverty Cure, I think, and it was showing sort of the real prosperity that can happen when the government deregulates things and people can start their own businesses and make themselves better off. And it used Africa kind of as an example. As soon as people were able to start their own businesses, they were able to pull themselves up and also create things that help the country as a whole.
Right. Yeah. Now, how do the students feel about the embargo? We say we're quasi-lifting an embargo with Iran, which we're not doing actually, but and the embargo on Cuba. And how do they feel about that? What's their reaction to that?
Very honestly, I don't know that many students that have any idea what any of that is.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll change the subject then.
I mean, it's a matter of, they've nitpicked what they want, and a lot of it right now is focused on the election. And in terms of specific things that or legislation that's happening, I think students and sort of millennials in general, they see big pictures, and the smaller pictures of specific bills and stuff that are going through just really don't register too much. I've heard very little. Actually, I think I've heard nothing in response to that except from, some diehard activists.
Okay. What about my favorite subject, the minimum wage? If I came to your school, I would be talking about the minimum wage, I tell you. And do they have any voice their opinion about that? And what's the general feeling on that?
People are very vocal about that one, actually. Students, I think, it depends on where you're going. Actually, my campus is hosting a minimum wage event next month that we're really excited about. We're bringing in an expert, and we're excited to get people out because we know a lot of people aren't going to be happy with what he has to say. So we're looking forward to a good conversation afterwards. But one of the really big things is that people think that it's a good thing, and you want a living wage, and that this is important to people's prosperity and to people being able to live their lives well. And I see this a lot in sort of econ classes where a professor will challenge that, or they'll even bring it up, like they'll put it on a graph of economics, like even let's keep it theoretically, not even look at it like about what's happening in Seattle or something. Even if we just keep it at a theoretical level, setting this price floor really doesn't make any sense, and it causes a problem. And even then, when it's very clearly, you can see it in physical evidence in Seattle, and you can see it in theoretical evidence in the classroom, you'll still have students that will fight the professor on it completely and be like, well, this isn't, like, you don't have the whole picture. What about all the benefits that are going to happen from it? So I've yet to see someone really change their mind on that, unfortunately, because they're just it sounds like a good thing. Let's pay people more, can do more things, and then that will help the economy because then they have more spending. And they realize that all of that is very short-term and short-lived, and they don't take enough time to sort of look into the long-term effects of it.
We have a comment here by our board operator, Mr. Preston. What's your comment?
Well, my comment is, about the minimum wage deal. I don't know, now McDonald's, there's already been, McDonald's has already said they're looking into and will be implementing the automatic kiosk where there's no person. You go up, you place the order at a kiosk. You don't have to deal with a human. And then I'm not sure if it was Burger King or another fast food restaurant, they're actually developing robots, a robotic system to where they're not going to be able to pay $15 an hour to these people or whatever they want, and so they're developing, where you're not even, people are going to be losing more jobs than they're going to be gaining jobs if this goes through. It sounds
in fact, next time when I get married, of course I'm going to get married again. I'm only 72, so I got many years to go. I'm going to marry a robotic wife, So she says, I'm going shopping. I can just turn the switch off and she just stops, and that's the end of that. She doesn't shop. I'm only kidding. Believe it or not, that was only a joke. But have we ever addressed with the students, say, fine, you just started your own business, whatever it is, right? And someone comes to you, and you need someone with minimal skills, maybe, let's assume for a second, just to sweep the floor and, keep the place clean, throw out the garbage, open the place in the morning. I mean, really a zero-skill job, but someone who needs a job and is willing to learn and work for whatever it is, but they just want to work, and they realize that they don't have the skills. They dropped out of high school or whatever, and you agree to pay that. How much, if this was your business and you're just starting it and you have very, very minimal funds, how are you going to pay that person $15 an hour? And if you pay that person with minimal skills $15 an hour, what about the person with skills when they come in? Are you going to pay them $30 an hour? Now you got two people, you're paying a total of $45 an hour. It's times 8. What does that come to, Preston? 45 times 8. Can you do that real quickly? Hurry up. Okay, hold on. Hurry up. There's a calculator, times 8, okay?
$360.
All right, that's $360 for that one day, and plus with the FICA and all the other stuff, you're talking somewhere in the vicinity of over $400 a day just in salaries alone. Forget about the rent, the heat, the air conditioning, inventory, etc. Where are you going to get this money from? I mean, do they ever think if they were in business that they would need mega thousands just to open this door up? And if people don't come in and buy, now they can't just buy $400 or $500 a day. They have to buy $1,000 worth of product a day just to break even paying those salaries.
Yeah, I think it's, you didn't talk about those people, but some people's responses will be that if you can't afford to pay the minimum wage, or if you can't afford to pay your employees a living wage, one, that you're taking advantage of them, and two, that your business must not actually be that successful. And I think that stems from a lack of understanding about how business actually works. People don't understand that entrepreneurs, when they start off their business, they essentially live their work. Their work becomes their life. They'll spend their entire life on it. They're not paying themselves minimum wage at this point because they wouldn't be able to afford it.
But many do without a salary for years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they think that this will pay off in the long run, and they think that what they're doing is valuable enough to where they'll take it out in the market, and people will agree with them that it's very valuable, and they'll eventually become profitable on it for taking this risk. And that's sort of the mentality of the entrepreneur and the mentality of the risk taker in business. And yet you're saying that you should, it's just a very odd argument that they'll have. They'll say, well, you're not successful. And I don't think they understand exactly how businesses get started. You could even point to some of their businesses that they like getting started similarly, and they're like, well, that's different. Like, those people are getting paid money now because they're really successful. And I'm like, but they started off with nothing, and you can't just expect people to always pay minimum wage. And they'll point, though, to jobs sort of like fast food restaurants where you haven't really seen an increase in years, but that's because the requirement of skill level hasn't really increased in years. There was an initial increase in skill level required when things got a little bit more mechanical because you had to deal with machines and stuff. But the idea that sort of what Preston was saying about the machines sort of taking over the ordering systems and stuff like that, in one way that was probably going to happen eventually anyways because of innovation and that becoming the cheaper option. But it's sort of, I guess they call it the buggy whip effect. Like, there are no more buggy whips, but people still have jobs because that freed them up to do other types of jobs.
That's correct. Right.
All of those machines need mechanics. They sort of create their own industry in themselves, and people don't really see that happening, and they don't think it happens fast enough, so they'll say that we need to just stall everything, keep it the same, and just raise people's wages.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard anyone ask this question of students who are pro minimum wage. And here's the question. Who pays the business owner a minimum wage for creating the jobs in the first place?
Nope. Never heard that one.
What do you think of that question?
I think it's relevant, and I think it would be an interesting answer to hear what they have to say. But honestly, my anticipation of what they would say would be that people have this idea of business owners, a lot of students and a lot of people sort of more left-leaning, that businesses are corrupt. And I mean, to be fair, a lot of them are, and they're sort of like in bed with the government and all this other stuff.
Oh, those are the big corporations, but those are the ones that the leftists are voting for. Those are the ones that they're voting.
Yep.
This is the Hillary Clintons. They're in bed with the big corporations, big pharma, big agriculture, the military-industrial complex. And I'm 100% with them there. I'm talking about the guy who just opens up a local store or a service in his town. We're talking about the entrepreneur who's struggling just to put food on the table, starts a business. The question is, I'm not talking about General Dynamics or or a defense company, a $1 billion defense company. I'm talking about the poor guy who probably has difficulty paying the rent because he doesn't have enough business with which to keep his business going, and then who pays him the question, who's paying him the minimum wage? And yet he's the one that's taking the risk to create the job, and yet the person who comes in who has no responsibility is actually making as much, if not more, than this person is. And that happens, believe it or not, I've been there, it's happened more than once to me.
No, I'm sure it does, because you have that original person that's very invested and they're willing to not take a paycheck for a while, whereas getting other people on board is not as easy because they're not as invested in the business as they are. I think that people won't have an answer for it, and they'll say that they do support the little businesses, and this is why they support the little businesses, so they can make a living wage, but they don't really understand where that money's going to come from.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if the money comes from the government has no money. The government is broke. The government is $100 trillion broke, So they're going to take money from you to give to a business owner to guarantee that he has a minimum wage. But if you're a business owner, you can't have a minimum wage of $15 an hour. It's not enough. You're going to have to pay the business owner $50 an hour to survive because he has to run a business. So now he's making $50 an hour and you're paying for it. Now you're really hacked off that this guy's in business for himself, but you're paying for it. And it's the same argument all over again. You can't be for one without the other. Now, obviously, paying a business owner $50 an hour to go into business is tantamount to total insanity. But so is the minimum wage. Total insanity. It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. So
my first job, you know what I did? You know how much I got paid my first job? Zero. No. I went there. I begged the guy to work there. I wanted to work in a camera store. I wanted to work in this camera. The guy said, I don't need anybody. I said, no, I work for nothing. And I worked for nothing. And I remember every Saturday he used to give me a few dollars. And I was ecstatic. I used to go out that night, and have fun, go to a party or something like that. But I wanted to work there. It benefited him. I learned a lot. I loved working there. And my pay was absolutely zero. And no argument. Now I have an occupational health testing company. If a poor minority kid would come to me and say, Mr. Cristiano, I want to work for you for 3 weeks, which would mean that I would have to put him through an expensive training program for him to work for me, which I would pay for, right? But I said, but the condition is that you don't pay me a dime, and I will guarantee you, after 3 weeks, one of the biggest business mistakes that you can make is not hiring me. Would I hire that person for 3 weeks?
I mean, you can always, you really can't legally, but you can always...
No. We're talking about legally. We're not talking legally. I'm just saying, would that not be a great way to go? Now,
that would be a really good environment. Yeah. Legally, you can try to get around it by doing an unpaid internship, which, a lot of people will do to get around that, which is sort of terrible and counterintuitive to the whole minimum wage debate, but they'll say, which is interesting because a lot of these people that are very for minimum wage are the ones that have the most unpaid internships out of anyone else because they can't afford their people at that point.
Yeah. Well, this young lady came to my wife. She's an audiologist, and I happened to be at the office at that time, and she was interviewing her, and she wanted to start at this hellacious salary, but she wasn't qualified for the job. And she told my wife, she said, well, you can train me. Well, my wife's busy. She doesn't train. I said, well, so I asked, well, when you go to college, how much does a college pay you to sit in that classroom? She says, what do you mean? I said, well, how much do they pay you? She says, no, I pay them. I said, how much? And she told me how much she had paid. I said, it's a lot of money. I said, so you want to come here to this college, you want my wife to train you, but you want her to pay you a very handsome salary. She said, yes. And I looked at it like, you've got to be clinically insane. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But this is what the minimum wage people are saying. That you spend your money, you train me, but you better pay me a good salary, And whether or not and by the way, after a month and after I'm trained and I get certified or whatever the case may be, what I'll do is I'll quit and go someplace else and make more money because now I have the certification because you paid for it. Think about that. I mean, this is why these people don't go business for themselves, because they're a bunch of punks. I mean, they can't take it. They can't. They can't take the consequences of their own ideology. And are we out of time? Emily, this hour has flown by. I want to thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was great to come back. Thank you so much.
Well, I wish you luck, and I do hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Thank you so much.
And let me give you the last 30 seconds. I'll give to you so you can tell our listeners about your organization and how they may contact you if necessary.
Yeah, definitely. So Students for Liberty, like I said before, is a nonprofit organization focused on educating, empowering, and training student activists around the world. I specifically focus on North America, so the US and Canada. If you want to contact me, feel free at Rhorick@studentsforliberty.org. If you have any questions, also go to our website, studentsforliberty.org, and you can see we actually have a lot of events, over 24 regional conferences happening from October to November throughout the US and Canada, in cities probably close to you. If you want to check them out, it's just studentsforliberty.org/events/RC2015 if you want to check them out and attend. We have a lot of really great speakers coming in.
Thank you, Emily. You've been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye now. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends, and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.